Good afternoon, everyone. There has been, over the last several years, one key component that there is broad agreement on throughout City Hall and in the community, and that's this concept of safety beyond policing, recognizing that not every single interaction needs a police officer with a gun, recognizing the importance of a comprehensive and integrated approach to public safety where we can pair individuals with expertise in certain areas with the specific circumstances that are happening on the ground. That was the debate largely that was had in 2021, and immediately we began working on setting up this comprehensive approach through an Office of Community Safety, where we're de-siloing some of the different interactions that could be had and to provide a response that is coordinated throughout our city, whether that's through our fire department, our Department of Neighborhood Safety, or our police department. All of these systems can work together, and we've spent a huge chunk of the last several years setting up the specifics so that the right hand can be talking to the left hand on a consistent basis. And I'll tell you, it's been working. Whether it was through Operation Endeavor in a partnership between our police department and Office of Violence Prevention, or it's in a number of these safety beyond policing initiatives that are already underway. This system is working, is helping, among other things, to drive down crime. We're seeing the results itself in the data, and I'll give you a few specifics as to what this safety beyond policing work has looked like even before this report itself reached its final conclusion. First, traffic control. We have pretty significantly increased the number of traffic control agents that are available to offload work that has traditionally been done by police officers. Second, you all are familiar with our behavioral crisis response unit. That is a unit that through both the 2023 and 2024 budget will be rolled out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in all 5 precincts. Now, we want to make sure that we're not just doing this quickly, but doing this right, and so we want to make sure that people are trained in, that they're ready to go, that they understand that difficult interactions require a very delicate and specific response, and we're moving in that direction right now. Safe stations, which is a partnership between our health department and fire department, provides a safe haven and refuge for people who are suffering from opioid addiction in our fire stations themselves. And then finally, we've offloaded both property crimes and theft reports from MPD to more of a 311 response. And the purpose here is twofold. One, again, it's to provide a unique expertise to the specific circumstances that are happening on the ground, whether that's a firefighter or a mental health responder. And secondly, this frees up police officers' time to be dealing with the more critical circumstances. We want police officers to be focusing on the most difficult, perhaps violent situations so that they're able to suss out these difficult circumstances and have the time to do so properly. Those are just a few examples of the work that has been underway, and undoubtedly the largest segment of that work has been in setting up an entirely new government structure through an Office of Community Safety that has rolled out. Our first commissioner, of course, of our Office of Community Safety has been Cedric Alexander, and he's been leading that work over this last year. Now, going back even before this last year, going back to 2020, and a lot was happening back then, David Wilson, who deserves a whole lot of credit here, came to me with an offer to help. He was recognizing, as I was, that this concept of safety beyond policing had broad support, was something that we can and need to implement. And he had a relationship set up with Dr. Antonio Oftali, who had been doing this work both from an intellectual and educational perspective at Harvard University, but it was also had some very key experience as a monitor of a consent decree in Seattle. We met with Dr. Oftali. We were very much accepting and excited about, we're very excited about the services that he could potentially provide in producing a roadmap that brings us to additional safety beyond policing in a comprehensive way. Now, fast forward several years, we are now on the verge of rolling out Minneapolis Safe and Thriving Communities Report and Recommendations, which you should have before you. This is a report that is over 100 pages long. I could use the word comprehensive again, but I think I'd be pretty exhaustive. This is a report that includes a roadmap for where we ultimately need to go. This is a report that shows us where we need to go, and it's not going to happen overnight. In fact, it's not going to conclude the work even over the next couple of years. This is a long-term plan that we want to get going on in the immediacy. These recommendations and this roadmap for getting where I believe we need to go. As always, there are budget considerations. As always, there are a number of different externalities at the city that we're going to have to account for. But we feel strongly that this report provides us that roadmap for where we need to go. And I'm so appreciative both of Dr. Oftali for producing this report. Thank you so much to have this expertise at the city, and this kind of roadmap is of critical importance. And the Commissioner, Cedric Alexander, for his work as well. And so I'm proud to stand here with some council leadership. We've got our council Vice President Lene Palmisano, who's been leading on this work for quite some time, and Councilmember Latricia Vitaw, who's our head of the Public Safety Committee. She's ready not just to give a speech here, but talk about it, but to act on it too. This work is going to require deep collaboration between my office and the council, and as I mentioned earlier, this is an area where there is full-on agreement. Now, right now, this comes at a perfect time because we are on the verge of this budget process for 2024. In the immediacy, we can look to how some of these recommendations will fit into this next year's budget, and we can start planning for the allocations that are going to be made in the future as well. As you may recall, the last year's budget was the first biennial budget that we put forward, with the hope of getting some of the more significant recommendations in that first year and projected out towards the second. This will require an additional influx of dollars, some of which you've already seen, to, for instance, expand BCR work. And you've seen that throughout the 2023 and 2024 budget already. This will require additional people to help manage this work in the middle and long term. And so I want to stress and emphasize again, this is not going to happen overnight, but I'm very pleased that we are moving in the right direction. And Dr. Oftali will tell you this is an audacious proposal here. There is no city in the country that is moving towards something as significant and as comprehensive as the vision that we've got in Minneapolis, and we're going to make sure we do it right. So I want to also really thank our local foundations who have made this report and the recommendations possible. Thank you so much to the Polad Family Foundation. I see Susan Bass-Roberts in the audience. Thank you, McKnight. Thank you, Minneapolis and Joyce Foundations as well. These are entities that helped us get all of this set up to this point. Finally, I really want to thank my council colleagues for their support and for their incredible work around community safety, and for our city enterprise leadership as well, for being really on the cutting edge. And that's both our Chief Operating Officer, Heather Johnston, and our Commissioner of Community Safety in Cedric Alexander. So we're on the edge of implementation, as I mentioned, right now. And we've got a lot of work ahead, but we're excited to release this report to the public to give them a sense of the direction and the vision for where we collectively can go as a city. And with that, I will turn it over to our Vice President of the Minneapolis City Council and someone who is not a stranger to doing this work, Council Vice President Lene Palmisano.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, our local philanthropists stepped in our time of great need a couple years ago. And I'm really anxious to dig deeply into this research and learn about the recommendations. Thank you. It's also important to say we haven't waited to receive this report to get started. We have been and we are committed to this work of safety beyond policing that will build trust and foster safe communities. We've demonstrated this commitment by making improvements in our service to the residents of Minneapolis, as the mayor mentioned, and those who visit our city. and we will continue pressing forward on the commitments we've made. I will work to hold us accountable to that. I am excited for the potential of building upon the work of alternative safety and violence prevention strategies to create a system of public safety that delivers fair, equitable, and transparent outcomes for all. And I am keenly interested in exploring the establishment of some of the collaboration and partnerships that are being suggested to address community safety from a real multidisciplinary approach. So I look forward to using the results of this study, Dr. Oftali, as a guiding principle in the possibilities of where it can take us. I'll turn it over to our Public Safety Chair, Councilmember Vital.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Latricia Vital. I'm the Chair of Public Safety. I'm here today just to say we are excited about this report and the opportunity to begin the work with the Mayor's Office and Dr. Oftali and also Dr. Cedric Alexander. I would say that this is probably one of the most anticipated reports in my committee. Council members are committed to this work. We're ready to roll up our sleeves and get started. And I just want to end by inviting you all tomorrow to my committee meeting. Tomorrow at 1:30 is the Public Health and Safety meeting. Dr. Oftali is going to be giving us his report in that committee. We're going to learn a lot. We're going to get excited about it. I would love to see you all there tomorrow, and hopefully I will. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here with us this afternoon. Let me begin by saying the Office of Community Safety is now charged with leading this work, and we are pleased to have the Minneapolis Safe and Thriving Communities Report as a guide for us. I also want to again thank our philanthropic organizations who made this analysis and report very well possible. By investing in this thorough evaluation of what safety can look like in Minneapolis, those organizations have helped create our roadmap to evolve community safety. I also especially want to thank our nonprofit partners who work tirelessly to provide services which are critical to our city's violence prevention and intervention, as well as alternatives to policing efforts. The community has and always will be the integral part of community safety. These nonprofit partners, in collaboration with our neighborhood safety department, provide services in important areas of need. For an example, medical, mental health, and youth violence prevention, among others. A great example is our behavioral crisis response teams. We understand the importance of having trained and unarmed mental health professionals respond to certain situations rather than armed law enforcement. And we know these professionals have the unique expertise and ability and training and experience to help people in crisis, which is necessary for our city to be safe. The Office of Community Safety is committed to building our existing alternative initiatives and growing programs that are preventative, responsive, and restorative. Programs that center around collaborating with the community to stop the root cause of violence. A lot has been discussed and documented about the Minneapolis-Sullivan Agreement with the Minneapolis Department of Human Rights and the announced findings of the U.S. Department of Justice. Our city must innovate and transform how we serve and protect our residents and visitors. This work will complement the recommendations from the Safe and Thriving Communities Report. This report is another guide which we can use to transform public safety in our community here in Minneapolis. The Office of Community Safety is fully committed to learning from other places and national leaders, such as recommendations made in April of this year from the President's 21st Century Task Force renewed call to action, which I had the honor of being a member of. Thank you again to everyone who contributed to this great project and providing these strong recommendations. We look forward to learning more about Safe and Thriving Communities Report. We are all looking forward to it and the possible future implementation of these recommendations. Thank you. I'll now turn it over to my friend and colleague, Acting Chief Operating Officer Heather Johnston.
We're going to have a council presentation.
Oh, Council
We'll
President.
have our Council President, Andrea Jenkins, first, followed by Heather Johnson.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrea Jenkins. I'm the president of the Minneapolis City Council. Thank you, Director Johnston, for allowing me to speak now. And, I just want to offer my gratitude to all of the funders who supported this project, but most importantly to Dr. Aftali, who is a Ward 8 former resident anyway. We're really proud of that. But, as I was reading through the report, I was struck by the language that I have been using since the uprisings and the fact that we have to create a continuum of public safety. It cannot just be our MPD in blue, but it's going to take our entire community to work together to bring this vision to fruition, this vision of transformation, which has also been a word that I have been using since the beginning of this conversation, and we see it all throughout the report. We have to transform public safety in our community, which means we have to work with our community groups. We have to have these commissions that have been recommended in the report to be able to address some of the issues that lead to the causes of crime and violence in our communities, to work on affordable housing, to work on opportunities for young people in our communities, to work on addressing alternatives to policing, like our behavioral crisis team, like our community and violence interrupters. Those are the kinds of programs and projects that we need to work all together. And so I was thrilled to see the report finally. I think it's going to be an opportunity to transform public safety, not only here in Minneapolis, but throughout the country. And so I'm really thrilled to roll up my sleeves and get to work on implementing this plan. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you in our community to do the same. Thank you so much, and I will now turn it over to my friend and colleague, Heather Johnson, who is our interim COO.
Thank you, Council President. My name is Heather Johnston, and I'm the Interim City Operations Officer overseeing the Office of Public Service. The Safe and Thriving Communities Report offers a comprehensive roadmap to address community safety in Minneapolis, including safety beyond policing work. Fortunately, we have many initiatives that are already underway here in the city of Minneapolis. Over the past few years, many departments have worked together to identify alternatives to policing, shifting some functions away from MPD to serve the community more comprehensively. The Behavioral Crisis Response Team that was piloted in the Department of Performance Management and Innovation, formerly called the Office of Performance and Innovation, in partnership with 911, is an ongoing program to expand 24/7 service to all 5 precincts in 2024. These teams have been very successful, and we're moving that into the Department of Neighborhood Safety in the Office of Community Safety as a permanent part of the city's approach to community safety services. PMI is also actively working to embed mental health workers in 911's call center. In addition to this work, these departments have, including PMI, have worked closely with 311 and the Traffic Control Division of Regulatory Services to identify additional calls to be addressed by our non-sworn staff in the Office of Public Service. In the 2023 budget, the city funded an additional 9 positions in traffic control. This proposal came forward after traffic control experienced an increase in service requests of 10 to 15% year over year, with time-consuming complaints such as abandoned vehicles that require multiple visits by police, increasing 33% in the past 5 years. These are requests that no longer need to be responded to by police officers. The 311 Service Center has also been an integral part of reducing the workload on MPD, with residents now able to fill out all non-urgent reports online or over the phone, reducing calls to 911. Reports such as theft and lost property can be taken by a 311 operator. Under the new executive governance structure, the work of the Health Department's Violence Prevention Team was combined with other initiatives to create the new Department of Neighborhood Safety. Our Health Department continues to be committed to addressing the root causes of violence in our communities and addressing disparities that can lead to negative outcomes. The report underscores the importance of improving health outcomes in the community as a critical piece of the equation for preventing violence. The Office of Public Service has been actively engaged in finding innovative and collaborative service approaches to improving public safety, and we look forward to working in partnership with the Office of Community Safety to implement many of the recommendations in the report in the future. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Rock-Kelly.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Antonio Oftley. I'm Executive Director of Leadership for Network World at Harvard University and a lifelong Minneapolis resident. Grew up on the south side of Minneapolis on 28th and Lake area, so this is near and dear to my heart. It's wonderful to be here right now in Minneapolis, and I'm really confident in the future of this wonderful city around building safe and thriving communities. I also have confidence that Minneapolis will embark on this journey to be really the most ambitious plan around public safety, community safety in the nation. I see Minneapolis leading the country as we implement this plan to guide the rest of the nation and really the world in transforming public safety for safe and thriving communities. I say that because from my work, I look at policing organizations, public safety organizations around the world. We do a lot of research on this, and while there are pockets of innovation in various cities, no one is doing such a comprehensive and transformative plan as what we have in the Safe and Thriving Communities Plan. So Minneapolis will be the lead on this, and really looking forward to seeing the progress on this work. I would also like to thank Mayor Fry for starting this initiative, for reaching out to help me gather a team together to do this work. Under the mayor's leadership, along with the visionary city executives that were part of this work, and a very supportive city council, Minneapolis is really now poised to start building this future of community safety. The Safe and Thriving Communities Plan looks at public safety and community safety very holistically. Supporting individuals, families, and communities with three types of services very broadly that you can read about in the plan. The first set of services on that continuum are preventive services, things that Minneapolis has already been doing, some things that have really led the way. We're going to really augment that and build that up to have more upstream services, as we call them, that help build community safety and prevent crime and disorder from happening in the first place. The second major category of work is around responsive services to real-time and urgent needs, community safety needs that happen in communities. This includes sworn officer response as well as other forms of alternative response that can comprise that responsive type of service. And lastly, there are restorative services. These are what we call downstream services after perhaps a crisis happens in a community to help that community with trauma, to rebuild, and to have resilience and build the capacity for resilience over time. So a key strategy for all of this work will be combining these three types of services, the preventive, responsive, and restorative, into an ecosystem. Now, it's kind of an academic term, but really essentially what we're saying is knitting together these services, integrating them in ways that we can get to the root cause of challenges and problems in the community, and we can work with community to co-produce new solutions and services that can help individuals and families and communities feel safe as well as to thrive. As the report will show as you read it, a big component of this work is all of the infrastructure underneath it. That includes things like developing new operating models around community safety, modernizing 911, having more information sharing, better communication across agencies and services, and bringing those together in a way that's very holistic. Lastly, and of course, as we mentioned, this initiative comprises a real transformational vision. As the mayor said, it is somewhat audacious, and I think Minneapolis can embrace that. We can do reform in Minneapolis of core policing while also innovating and transforming for the community, and we can hold both of those and make progress on both as we move forward. In many ways, this is answering the community's demands for a new public safety operating model that delivers fair and equitable and transparent and valued outcomes. So the North Star for this plan really is transformation. in achieving an entirely new value proposition, new levels of legitimacy and trust in community safety and in government broadly, and fostering safe and thriving communities across the city. So with that, I will turn it back to the mayor, and I think we'll be open to some questions as we move forward as well. Thank you.
Again, I want to thank Dr. Oftley for all the work on this report. This was no small endeavor, and we're really appreciative of the work that's also to come. And with that, we'll open it to any questions.
It's a legislative question probably for the mayor and council leadership. So you've got MDHR stuff and DOJ, which is separate from this, I understand that. But that's gonna cost a lot of money, estimates anywhere from 5 to 15 million, nobody knows. How much is this gonna cost? How much more staff will you need? And where does all this money come from?
So I'm happy to start off with an answer, and certainly if council members want to chime in, they're certainly welcome to as well. I've stated already that the consent decree itself is going to be expensive if we're going to do it right. This is something that not only should we do, we're legally obligated to do, and so that is a route that we're marching down. And to your point, Jay, we also do have a tight budget. Not tight is in the 1990s slang, but tight in that we don't have a lot of money. And so we're thank you for that. Yeah. You know, first of all, we're going to find some creative ways to do this right. We have received monies from other jurisdictions at time. We have a model that is going to be in place to receive additional monies from other organizations, both governmental and non. And I also believe that these are directions that the city wants to go collectively, and that people are willing to spend money on getting a comprehensive safety system right. Do I have an exact figure right now on how much this is going to cost? I'll be honest with you, no. Millions for sure. Millions for this particular implementing this report, and also millions of dollars for implementing the consent decree. You know, you pay for what you get, or you get what you pay for. And we're going to be marching down the route. Now, obviously, there's some hard decisions that are going to have to be made along the way. We understand that.
Any idea how many more employees, staff you might need for all of this, or is that still to be figured out?
We imagine at the end of the day, years down the road, yes, there'll be many staff that are added. I mean, this will be managerial. This will be the people that are actually the boots on the ground to do the safety beyond policing work. And we're going to need, certainly for the consent decree, people that are engaged to do compliance and auditing, et cetera. And so collectively, yeah, it'll require additional staff. I wish I could give you a figure on that, but Council President? Oh.
Yeah, I will just chime in a little bit and say that, you know, as you guys all read into the report, you'll see that a lot of it really depends on community members to help us bring this forward as well. And so fortunately, we have a number of community groups and organizations that are poised to be a part of this work. Groups like the Community Mediation Team and other community members that are going to help us to bring this vision into fruition. I think we're going to have to count on and rely on some of our philanthropic partners who have already invested in this work, and hopefully they will be able to continue. But you're right, we're going to have to prioritize, we're going to have to make some sacrifices and really figure out what it's going to take to bring this whole thing into a reality.
Does this get rid of some of the committees? There seems like there are already a lot of different committees for public safety. Does this kind of whittle things down and put it in a more organized fashion, or those fold in, or how does the efforts that are already underway, how does that fold into this?
The question was, how does this report and the recommendations come out of it fold into the work that is already underway? I'll start, and if any council members or if Dr. Oftley wants to add on, please feel free. So we have a consent decree which is focused around police accountability. Obviously, there are facets that go beyond that, but that's the primary focus. This report is focused on safety beyond policing and incorporating a broad approach that again helps to lay out a roadmap for where we can go. Certainly we have, I mean, there's no shortage of commissions at the city. We're the land of 10,000 commissions in some senses, but this is one that has a very clear focus, and it charts a very clear path. So I do believe that it folds in.
Okay, so the primary, I guess the highlight of this is sort of a plan of how to do this. Can you give us some sort of what makes it different than what we're already doing? What is upstream services? What does that even mean?
Doctor, you want to give us the rundown?
Yeah, just to your first question, I think there's been a number of initiatives in the city that have produced really good work. So one example is the mayor's public safety work group, and many of the people that were part of that were interviewed for this particular plan in the research. And so there are work streams that have been ongoing that will flow into this. As the mayor mentioned, the Safe and Thriving Communities Plan is more of a roadmap. So the city can take this and tailor it a bit and decide how fast the city wants to move on implementation, as well as scope-wise, and those work streams I think will continue. And so you'll find in the report that we definitely leveraged a lot of discussions with city executives, with community-based organizations to find out, to learn from their best practices and their innovations, and then amplifying that in the plan so that it can be built up over time. So I think you'll find that this is again, a roadmap that brings together a number of streams into one comprehensive approach. When we look at the three types of services in the plan, those three buckets along that continuum, we talk first about preventive services. So those are all forms of services, some city-based, some county-based, where there's collaboration with the county, some community-based services that all work around prevention, meaning violence prevention, services that help children and youth have more access to, for example, after-school programs to give them some enrichment, to do different things and spend their time. Services that help the community to build capacity for their own to prevent violence from happening or disorder from happening. So everything that not only provides a safe community, but also we intentionally use the term thriving. This plan operates with the understanding that critical to the city of Minneapolis for the future, not only socially but also economically, is that people and communities can feel safe walking to school or going to work. And so all those services that prevent bad things from happening are clustered in the preventive work in that first category.
But aren't we already doing a lot of that work, all that preventive work? I guess I don't understand what's different about this plan, because we do a lot of the preventive response and this sort of stuff already.
I think so. So you make a great point in that there are a number of innovations that under this mayor that the city has already been working on across all three of those areas. So there are a number of really good preventive services that have already been stood up, responsive things like the PCR, which we've talked about, as well as a small amount of more of the restorative resilience type building services. This plan documents those, but also says we need to do much better in Minneapolis at measuring the effectiveness of those plans, of those programs, finding which services work well and amplifying those and investing more in those, and perhaps creating new ones that fill some gaps. So a critical first piece of work around this will be looking at that continuum to say, where are we doing well? We already know we have some good work. Where could we improve some things, and where do we need to augment and develop some new services? So you'll see that's a bit more robust and rigorous of an approach going forward as the roadmap gets built out than what's currently happening.
I have a couple questions. So for this launch list that we were handed, is this part of your report, or, because I heard you outline the three prevention responses you just talked about to you, but where does this launch list talk about some 12-month deadline fall in? And then I have a big question after that.
Yeah, so I consulted with the mayor and Dr. Alexander on how we roll out the Safe and Thriving Communities Plan and what are the critical steps necessary to move forward with it. What we did in the plan, so this is part of the launch list, is part of the plan, is to distill some concrete action items of work into these 5 categories, which broadly include things like having community engagement in the overall work, to looking at how fast we need to implement and what that means for budgets, looking at the governance and operations of public safety and community safety and how that may need to be improved. Different work groups that would have to support this work, as well as ideally a dashboard so we could track progress over time. So that is part of the plan, but also contingent upon funding for the plan and working collaboratively to start that process. But in an ideal state, we would want to try and move forward on all 5 of these categories of work in order to really jumpstart the build-out of this overall plan.
We have time for 2 more questions. Thank you. I was wondering, as a Southsider, what was your reaction when you saw what happened to George Floyd, and how did that shape your work?
Shouldn't have answered that. Actually, that's a tough one. So the 3rd precinct was my precinct growing up. And that precinct was very vital to me, not only to my family. We had challenges in my family, like many challenges have, and those officers not only helped my family, but lifted us up. At the same time, I saw some of the things that were probably problematic as a child with certain officers. So I knew the history, so to say, of much of Minneapolis Police Department, culturally, how they operate, but I could see the good and the bad from that. We know in policing that at times, horrific things happen. And when I was in Boston and saw what happened with the murder of George Floyd, it was gut-wrenching. And it really hit me hard. And so we knew, I knew at that time, and the mayor, as I talked to him, knew from that day forward that we had to do something different. The light was shining on Minneapolis, right? Everyone around the world is looking at what Minneapolis is doing at that point in time. And we wanted to be part of something where we could say, okay, let's take that light now and do something dramatically different so the world sees us leading in Minneapolis rather than being the focus of all the negative. And so that, I think, for me was a motivator to say, what can we do differently? And I'm, again, thankful for the mayor and for David Wilson, who's a longstanding community member that has helped the city in many ways to reach out to start building out this new vision. And so I think in many ways, we didn't put in the plan, in memory of George Floyd, but I think, in spirit we did, right? To know that we can not only hopefully solve those types of things from happening in the beginning, but more broadly to just, to build, again, safe and thriving communities where people are not in those situations where harm can happen. And where officers are not always in situations where they're having to deal with the worst possible situations, right? So we want to build out an array of services that help everyone be safe and thrive.
Thank you. Last question.
Dr. Ostelli, if somebody, just a regular person from your neighborhood, walks up to you today and says, "Hey, I heard you did $400,000, spent 3 years on this thing. Tell me the upshot. What's it going to do for Minneapolis policing and public safety?"
Yeah, so this the Safe and Thriving Communities Plan is a transformational plan. This fundamentally changes the way that a city like Minneapolis can deliver safety to communities, can deliver services that help on the human side, the human services side, social services side, in integrating them in a way that no other city has done. To be able to wrap around individuals and families and communities, to be able to provide an environment for everyone to live their best life, to be, to feel safe, and that's something that it took largely research to understand how to do. As I mentioned earlier, no city that I'm aware of has done this in such a comprehensive way. There are cities that have pockets of innovation. Maybe they're good at alternative response, or they have some good preventive type services. But when you put the continuum together, no city has really done that. So we wanted to take a lot of time to rigorously look at best practices across the nation, to look at the innovations that were currently happening under Mayor Frye's leadership, to document that work, and then to map out what needed to be improved over time to really deliver results. So the investment by Poled Family Foundation and others, Poled was the lead on this, was instrumental in being able to do this work and delivering it in a way that is implementable going forward.
We'll take one more. Nina, I saw your
Looks hefty.
It passes the thud test, right?
Could you just describe kind of how these, they mentioned 3 years, how was this data gathered, how were local residents involved? Can you describe your process a little bit?
Sure. And just a little bit of context on the timeline for this. We had first started discussions in 2020, right? So after, as we mentioned, after the Floyd murder happened and a number of, public demonstrations were happening, and people in the community were asking for a new form of safety response and new services. So we started having discussions, really in 2020. In 2021, we started to ease a bit into the research, meaning that I had a team with me of which fluctuated a bit, but about 5 to 10 people. We had subject matter experts from policing, from human services. We had members from the University of Chicago and their 911 transformation initiative to look at how we knit these things together technologically. So a number of people that we brought in to understand, as I mentioned, what's happening across the country around best practices, but then also looking a bit more academically from a research perspective on, what does it take to actually build systems change like this? What's the theory of change around all of this? As well as third, looking at what's currently happening in Minneapolis. And a subcomponent to that was doing a lot of research with community members, with agencies and organizations doing the work. So we don't have the exact number, but we conducted probably more than 150 sit-down interviews with key service providers across the city, key community-based organizations, to better understand from them, what do you want to see in the community to create safety and help people thrive. And so from their ideas, we distilled that and connected it with the other best practices to put together a comprehensive report. So it really was probably 18 months or so of the real intentional work of research and then writing and producing it to get to this overall product.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.